Good morning. I would like to thank the organizers for this invitation, for this opportunity to present our facility, which I'm here on behalf of Professor Luiz Coutinho and Professor Carlos Labate from ESALQ, where the facility is established for RNA and DNA sequencing and also for proteomics and metabolomics. There is a site if you want to access the facility. In this site you can find all the information and the programs and all the equipment available and all the protocols that we leave there for you to consult. For this facility we have support from a commission that from different areas, from different universities and institutes that give all the support for the facility. We also realize workshops. There was the first one in 2012 that was very good to integrate all the community involved with this kind of facility and to answer questions about how to work, how to analyze the data. It was very profitable. For large-scale DNA sequencing, Professor Coutinho is responsible, and we can analyze a lot of samples, as I'm going to show you. For this RNA sequencing, we have equipments acquired by FAPESP, the high scan, and someone was donated from Amphimetrics. This last one acquired by USP and upgraded with FAPESP grant, and also this one from CAPES. What is interesting to see is that every month we are getting known about the service, and over 60 projects in the last 3 years came from different places from Brazil and even from abroad. So this is very nice because we have this widespread facility for use. And for preparing the samples and analyzing the results, we give all the support to the users. This is a course realized in 2013 for the first RNA sequence training course that was very, very nice. We have a team composed by postdocs, Gustavo, which is responsible for the libraries and sequencing, Ricardo Brassalotti from Procondis, Sônia Andrade, a postdoc for bioinformatics, Nilei Silva, a technician from USP from sequencing support, Jorge Andrade, a technician from USP giving support in bioinformatics and also technical support, and Marcela Paduan, which is a technician helping with the libraries sponsored by FAPESP. For proteomics, that is supervised by Professor Labate, we have Thais Cataldi, which is here, which is the mass spectrometry specialist from Procondis, Lívia Francischini give the support in bioinformatics, myself, Simone Gonzalez, and Ilara Budzinski, which is mainly involved with metabolomics. In the site, you can find all the protocols and all the kits used for preparing the samples, so you can download anything you need with all details of chemical that we use, how to prepare the samples, with all the details for the preparation. But it's very common people call us and come to the lab because they want a meeting to discuss the data, how to organize the experiment, which is very nice because we learn also with them because the kinds of samples are so variable that we need their support as well to prepare the samples in the proper way. In the site you can find also how much we charge for each sample. The costs are different for the university and companies that look for support as well. And this is the price of for MALDI, and this is the Synapti G2 for proteomics. For metabolomics and lipidomics, we also have a cost for sample. Here is just to give you an idea of the diversity of samples we are analyzing and the contributions. So we have samples from different places, universities, institutions, from medical school. Just to highlight some from different places, from Paraná State, from UNESP, even from Argentina, and INCOR, CTBA, from USP, Unicamp, a lot of different places. Here is the finalized projects from this Synapti G2 from Waters used for proteomics. So this is the institution, the kind of analysis, and the amount of samples analyzed. Just to highlight the different institutions that were involved. And here are some of the finalized projects from metabolomics and lipidomics using the QTOF Ultima from Waters. So we can highlight some from Unifesp. We use a lot that medical school look for lipidomics mainly. From Unifesp, Unesp, ESALQ, even from Montpellier we have collaborations, and also medical school. The equipments available for proteomics and metabolomics, we have a Synapti G2 HDMS for label-free proteomics acquired by FAPESP, and a QTOF Ultima EP, which we used in the beginning for proteomics. Now we are using for lipidomics and metabolomics, and a MALDI TOF 5800 from AB Sykes acquired by FAPESP. We also have a GC TOF MS for gas chromatography from Pegasus, acquired by USP. The Synapti G2, we can do label-free quantitative proteomics, phosphoproteomics, and glycoproteomics. Just to give you an idea about the results we are getting with those techniques, we have a project with, of sucrose accumulation in sugarcane to analyze the profile during the developing stages of sugarcane till the last stage when you have the most sucrose accumulation. So just to show you the high throughput analysis generating a very large number of proteins, and which is very interesting, but in the same time is very laborious to analyze because you finish up with a very big amount of data that you need to interpret after. This is the MALDI TOF from AB Sykes and Nano LC2D for proteomics, lipidomics, phosphoproteomics, glycoproteomics, and carbohydrates. You can use this equipment for liquid chromatography before spotting the dish for the MALDI analysis, which is very handy because you can analyze around 400 samples at once. What I would like to show here is that we give support to all stages of the preparation of the sample to the analysis and the interpretation of the data. We can also are using the MALDI for imaging. So for this, we have to establish a protocol for each different tissue and cryo-sectioning it, cover with the matrix, and then analyze the protein profile and validation of the data, with, which is a very simple technique you need to improve for each kind of sample, but is promising a very nice result. For this cutting, we acquired this by FAPESP, this cryostato for MALDI, so we can freeze the tissue and cut it in very low temperature. Very much good for animal cells. This is an example of some results of Eucalyptus grandis leaves, which are resistant or susceptible to Puccinia psidi, which is a fungi that causes very large losses in eucalyptus. So you can see a different profile of lipids between the resistant material and susceptible ones. So we can figure out some possible molecular markers which are interesting to trigger this problem of resistance for the fungal disease. We also have collaborations with companies. This is a very profitable collaboration between Boticario, because what I see, which is very interesting in this collaboration, is the exchange we have with the company. They bring the persons to our lab, they stay there for 2 or 3 weeks, and we exchange informations. They help us, and we help them to develop the technique. And we are getting very nice results for skin samples, for lipidomics, and they were also interested in analyzing some fixative products in the hair. So it was a very nice time we had with them, because we could improve a lot and have a nice exchange. The QTOF Ultima with UPLC Acuity, we use mainly for secondary metabolites, phenolic compounds, terpenes, and also for lipidomics. The Pegasus GC TOF-MS we use mainly for analyzing primary metabolites, amino acids, organic acids, and sugars and esterols, but requires derivatization of the sample, a little bit more complicated than the LC. The extraction methods are very simple. You just have to choose which is the best solution you are going to use to extract, depending on which compound you are interested in analyzing. We normally ball mill the sample and extract with chloroform or methanol solution in water, or methanol and acid formic acid. This preparation is very important to be well done, to have very good, the quality of the analysis to be good. So you can analyze polar metabolites and lipophilic metabolites depending which extraction buffer you use. After that, as you need some expertise in statistics and in multivariate analysis, we have the demand also to help the people that come to use the facility to analyze the data. So in fact, we need more technicians, more people trained, because we can't cope with so much demand to analyze the data, because you spend 1 month running your samples and 5 analyzing the data, because the generation is very large. This is an example, those materials that I showed you, comparing the metabolic profile of the susceptible and resistant plants, you can see they are very much apart one from another. So you can use really this technique to identify potential markers. Now I just highlight here some problems we could discuss about, have suggestions to improve the facilities. One point is, for DNA sequence, the users have no problems in paying for services. However, for proteomics and metabolomics analysis, users tend to ask for collaborations. In many cases, they have not requested funding to pay for analysis. It's very common. We need funding to maintain the equipments and consumables, such as liquid nitrogen, which demand is very high, and other special gases. Until last year, USP was providing such funds, but with the financial problems that is facing today, we don't have enough support. The costs of running the facilities are high, and the prices charged are not enough. We need to have support from FAPESP or universities in order to maintain the good standards. We also need technicians to give support to users. Most of our technicians are paid by own projects and are postdocs that provide support to users. It is necessary to have a continuous support from FAPESP, provide technical scholarships, for example. If the facilities could have a FAPESP project and users with FAPESP projects as well, could transfer the costs of service directly to our account, this would avoid having to pay 20 to 25% costs of overhead to foundations. So this is the main problem I think we have. I mean, people, in particular for the SYNAPT G2 analysis, which is very expensive, people don't have, I think it's a kind of naive, they don't have an idea about how much running a sample would cost. So it's very common, PhD students come and ask for help. I'll put your name in the papers. Okay, but it's not the only problem. We need, to run the equipment, we need to keep it running with solutions that are very costly, and I think this is the main point. I would like to thank you, and I'm open for questions if you have some.
Well, I thank Professor Brun for this opportunity to have this presentation. It is announced that I will speak about the electron microscopy laboratory, but I will also mention some things about scanning probe and micro and nano fabrication facilities. CNPEM, National Center for Research in Energy and Materials, is an organization somewhat different from those that have been preceded this talk. It's a non-governmental, non-profit organization which operates 4 national laboratories: the Synchrotron, Biosciences, Bioenergy, and Nanotechnology, where I am the director. It's ruled by legislation that is applicable to private organizations. So we don't have to follow the law 8666, which is very famous, and the employment is ruled by CLT, which means I can be fired tomorrow. And we just had the recent proof of this possibility a few weeks ago. Our institutional development plan was completed in 2013. It's effective from this year. Directors report to the boards, and we have different career tracks: researchers, specialists, technicians, management, and other more to the administrative side. And I think the specialist career is very important for us because that's people who are evaluated not for their own scientific output, but primarily for the output of the users. The mission of CNPEM is the operation of these laboratories, which I mentioned, which means support to academic and R&D users. In-house R&D, support to innovative companies, and training and education, although we don't grant degrees. Concerning electron microscopy, funds for electron microscopy first were disbursed more than 15 years ago, a multi-user FAPESP project from past century, which was later expanded on a project submitted 2002. No funds from the 2009 FAPESP call or later were used in the laboratory. Equipment has been renewed with federal funds. 2 new SEM instruments were acquired, allowing different configurations and experiments. That was FINEP money. And recently, dual beam FIB instrument was received in November and started operation 1 month ago. The center also provides for annual service contracts for preventive maintenance that amounts to about 360,000 reais a year. That was the figure for 2013. And spare parts, consumables, training. So users, academic users, are not charged. They don't have to pay anything. We charge industry. And industry makes about 1/3 of our income, actually more than 1/3 of our income, considering service and joint projects. That's straight industry money. That does not count the BNDES and FINEP money that comes together. That gives you an idea about the evolution of number of projects and publications. At this moment, the microscope agenda, other than the new FIB instrument, is saturated. And sections are being booked 4 weeks in advance. They are booked continuously. We think that 4 weeks is already beyond what we would like to do. Beyond doing imaging, electron microscopy allows you to do a number of different experiments. Diffraction spectroscopy, tomography, cryomicroscopy, single particle for protein structure. All of this is being done now, and we plan to enter holography pretty soon. This requires a team which has to be well-trained. That's our staff. All the persons listed there are CNPEM employees. And Dr. Jefferson Bettini, who is the facility manager for electron microscopy, is present here. He is very experienced, as many of the others, and we are now bringing a new addition from Ireland, should arrive in next July. Beyond technicians, the life science activities in laboratory are more recent. It was formerly dedicated to materials. We started projects in life science, especially cryomicroscopy. That was actually started before I went there 4 years ago. It has been progressing very well. And in this case, we count on the advice and support of truly outstanding researcher from England and Holland, Professor Martin van Heel, who is supporting the team. Education activity is represented mostly by school, which we do every 2 years, which is growing very steeply and is a big success. That allows us to give the initial theoretical and practical training to future users. We have also plans to improve our personnel, and we have to have an agenda, because they cannot just ask for leave of absence. I have to tell my board why these people is leaving, where to, and why. So that's the plan we have for the next 2 years. Who is going to where to do what, and what else we need or who else we need. That's both for materials and life sciences. This is the set of equipment that we have now, 3 transmission, 3 SEMs, including the FIB. As you can see, the SEMs are fairly new. One of the transmission is already 15 years old, and we are now working very hard to replace it. And I'm going to come back to this point soon. Beyond this, there is other equipment. There is a smaller low-vac SEM, which is now largely used for service to companies and less demanding users. And another instrument that was very important in the past is now outside its lifetime, and it is being reserved as a platform for instrumental development, which is kind of work that we are doing there. And beyond this, there is a sizable set of equipment for sample preparation, including cutting, polishing, ion milling, ultramicrotomy, sputtering, evaporation. I think that we can do almost every preparation technique that you can think. And what's more important, we have people to do it, and they can do it properly. And some of the training of our personnel is done on specific preparation techniques. There is no microscope in the world that can save a poorly prepared sample. Concerning the physical infrastructure, it is pretty good. It was very well established when the laboratory was set up, which was many years ago. And the microscopes are housed in a double-walled building. Heavy concrete instrument beds support the instruments. Air conditioning is supplied to a very complicated way to avoid any wind, any disturbance in the atmosphere of the room under strict temperature control. And all the walls are lined with sound absorbents. But as of 2011, when I got there, I realized that there were a few problems. Electromagnetic noise, which was solved by making 2 interventions, actually, using active noise suppressors. That was done in 2011, and now more recently in 2014. In 2014, we discovered that there was a half-hertz electromagnetic noise in the area. If anyone has any idea where this can come from, please tell me. But it is suppressed now. And we still have full dependence from grid power supply. But in the 2014 budget, there is money reserved to acquire a new power generator to allow independence when we have problems with the grid. And even though the budget is very tight, the money is reserved. As for user access, we use essentially the same platform used by Synchrotron and the other laboratories in CNPEM, which means it is very open, transparent user access, which is very tightly controlled by personnel from CNPEM who knows everything about who is assessing how proposals are progressing, and actually they report on users, not us, to the board. So users can be very safe on this respect. Every 3 months, I have to report to the CNPEM boards on the overall laboratory performance. That includes user access and attention. And every 6 months, I have to report to a committee nominated by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, which is the Comissão de Avaliação do Contrato de Gestão. And they come to check every information, and they want to know what's going on. And they always keep telling us that there is a lot of people in the country that does not know that we exist, and these people should be better informed, otherwise we are not doing our job properly. And we keep informing people. The most recent complaint that was received in the electron microscopy area was in 2011, and I will report it because I think it is important. A user sent a message to the scientific director of FAPESP, not to us, suggesting that São Paulo State researchers should have at least 50% of time of access to the transmission equipment, since this equipment was largely supported by FAPESP in the acquisition. And using the statistics that we have, this researcher was informed that São Paulo State researchers, not including CNPEM personnel, were using 80% of the TM time. So if there is someone to complain, it's not within the state of São Paulo. The laboratory, the scientific performance and overall development, but especially the infrastructure and scientific performance of the laboratory are assessed by an international advisory board, which is nominated here. 2 are Brazilians, well known, and 4 are distinguished researchers from different places. The more or less informal coordinator is Professor Marcos Antonietti, who is director of the Max Planck Institute in Golem. And what's copied below is the report of this committee concerning the electron microscopy facility in CNPEM. And you can see that is very favorable. We keep looking for the future. We are now negotiating acquisitions currently, very currently. We are discussing acquisition of double-corrected instruments with various provisions of lower energy TM, for especially as an entrance instrument for cryomicroscopy, and additional 2 instruments for biosciences. Well, they are shared between biosciences and life sciences. So I'd like to tell, well, prior to entering this, we spent about 1 year examining the scientific case. Is there a scientific case for making big investment in new microscopes? And examining the materials from users, listening to people abroad, we thought so. And reason is, some of the reasons are given ahead. Why do we need a corrected electron microscope? Because this can allow us, for instance, as you can see, to obtain very high resolution images, well beyond what we can now do more or less comfortably. And you can, in real-time experiments, these are certainly not our experiments because we don't have the microscope, you can see, for instance, transformation of graphene into fullerene, as I think that you could observe now. And if you look at the right side here, you see a big advantage. For light elements, you can use low voltage with very little damage, even after more than 2 hours exposure to the beam. While here, 26 minutes, it's gone. Yeah, thank you. You can see something that I still have difficulty to believe, but I really want to believe it. You can see hydrogen atoms. You can see columns of hydrogen atoms, which is unthinkable now. You can do tomography, high-resolution tomography, which means rotating your sample, taking images. Then you tilt the sample. You acquire images in under many different angles. And after doing this, you can do a 3-dimensional reconstruction, which is here. And you can see your particles, atoms in your particles, from every conceivable position. Analytical work can be done very fast. That's elemental mapping, doing using EELS, electron energy loss spectral images, in about 110 seconds. It's 2 minutes operating time. And these are real-time images for acquisition of analytical data. It's coming on, and improving the image. So, for anyone working in the times of photo cameras, this is almost unbelievable. Concerning the materials and life sciences, that started, as I mentioned, a few years ago. Results are coming out. In 2013 only, we received people from all these places here, and they went out with results. And that's why cryo-electron microscopy is creating a revolution in structure of living material. That's a 3.3 angstrom structure obtained in a microscope. And here you can compare the fast evolution. This is where things are with the kind of equipment that we have now. In 2008, it was already this way and keeps improving. So we have to keep up. Now, I will very quickly mention the Surface Science Laboratory. It has 5 instruments, and these instruments are much less expensive than electron microscopes. And in many cases, our users do not come to us because they don't have the instruments. They have the instruments. They come to us to learn how better to explore the instruments they have. So in this case, it is very important to have an adequate team. The attention to users in this area was not very good. Starting 2012, there was some change in the team. A number of projects increased. This year, we are now surpassing the whole number of projects in 2012. And what's more important, big increase in the percentage of non-CNPEM users, which our target is to have 80%. And as you can see, the user affiliation is distributed, even though this is a relatively new thing, because we did not have these many users now. Well, I'm running out of time, so I will skip the other laboratories, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, we are open for questions.
Well, my question is concerning the 2 models that we've seen here. We see infrastructures that were mostly based on knowledge and expertise of the people in the university, and that shared this knowledge with other groups, becoming a facility. And then we have a national facility like CNPEM that originally started by thinking this way. So the question is, at what point that one starting facility would become a national facility?
We don't want to become a national facility. We want to become a very focused facility on genomics, bioinformatics, proteomics, and some kind of cell biology. So I don't think that a single facility can supply all the needs for the Brazilian scientific community. I think that the way FAPESP is managing, giving the funds for different labs in different institutions is the correct way. So We need to have different, different labs and in different institutions. We need one thing that is very important for us, at least, is that in order to keep a sustainable way of keeping all those machines and teams working, it's absolutely essential to become self-sufficient in terms of funding. Because, of course, today we have FAPESP that is managing the money coming from the state of São Paulo very efficiently. But I think that to be, we need to think that we need to be self-sufficient, like the facilities in other universities in abroad, and like the one that we are going to see today is working. And I think that the facilities must focus on some technologies and do the best work as possible in that particular. This is what I think. I don't want that LACTAD at the University of Campinas become a national facility. With all the government, federal government, saying what we need to do. I think that, in my opinion, this is not the right way.
I agree with Paulo, because I think if you have different places, you can have diversity to different experience to couple with the demand for different kind of analysis. I think I agree. Yeah.
Well, I think that we need multiple solutions for everything, and for some things, we need one specific solution. That depends on, for instance, as I mentioned, on the amount of money that you have to invest in a single item. If you talk synchrotron, there is no doubt. If you come down to smaller but still very large equipment, when you talk electron microscopes nowadays, we may be talking about $5 million a piece. There are cases in 8 million euros a piece, right, and more. So when it comes to this level, it's possible to realize to have good information if the who can support it. Is the structure adequate? For some of the things that I showed here, there is no way you can think of running with postdocs and untrained technicians, right? You have to have PhDs that are committed to service, right? They have their own research interests. We stimulate this, but actually they have to present users' results. Myself, I'm still an active researcher. I publish, right? But no way I can keep my job based on my research output. My job is going to be kept depending on the laboratory output, which means essentially user satisfaction, and even more especially, satisfaction of the user employers and funders with their output, right?
Is the industry important for the labs? The money coming from them or not? What can you do to solve this?
I can talk about our experience. We are open for industry to come over and to request our help in the facility. That since we are located inside USP, there is just a bureaucracy that involves the money how this industry can pay us. But we are having here in São Paulo, as showed by the first presentation, we have Braskem, Natura, all of them have bench work. So they do need some, to complement their work, some data from microarrays and proteomic analysis and everything. So for us, we don't see any problem in this field. Just to comment, I think when we start a core facility, we start from zero. We need not only the money from FAPESP to pay the equipment, but all the infrastructure needs to be paid. And USP didn't have that money that time. So we have to think how we're going to change our electric supply, to change a building that was devoted to class lectures in a building that will host very complicated equipment. And this money can help us. It's easier way to use this money to infrastructure.
Well, for us, participation of industry is essential in many cases. It's essential in the microfabrication laboratory, which I could not mention. It's essential in a new facility which was opened 1 year ago, and is remarkable because 50% of the users come from abroad, and abroad in this case means United States, Germany, Japan, and other countries, right? So this facility was set up fully with money from Petrobras. They needed work done in some area. It's not service. It's they need to advance in some fundamentals, and they came up with the money. There is more money about this type, and I want to stress one thing that I mentioned. At least 1/3 of our income comes from industry. And I tell you, that's money that once it enters, provided you give the results, you provide the results, it's free money. You can use it for whatever. Unfortunately, CNPEM cannot pay dividends. It's a non-profit organization, right? So money is reinvested, and it helps a lot.
Yes, I agree with Fernando that participation of industry is absolutely essential. And at Unicamp, at LACTAD, what we do is we charge a little more for service requested by the industry. But remember that innovation is done in industry, and they need, to have access of high quality and high sophisticated data, and for us it's absolutely essential. And also, collaboration with the equipment suppliers I think it's essential too, because you can keep in touch with the developers, and that eventually can help improve the technology that you are processing or using in the center. So collaboration with the industry is absolutely essential.
In our case as well, it's very fruitful. As I said, we exchange knowledge, and based on the difficulties I highlighted about the maintenance of the equipment, they help a lot. And also for scholarships, it's just agreements we made with them, and we can get. It's very. I think it's crucial, this kind of collaboration with the industry.
Yeah, I want to add something more concerning the money, but actually related to what we call Custo Brasil, right? And we are in a globalized world. In our case specifically, as a national laboratory, we are competing with laboratories in Japan, United States, and Czech Republic. And I don't know if you have an idea about how many samples leave Brazil every night in the courier services sent to foreign testing laboratories of various types. Huge number. There are companies living on that, shipping samples, distributing results here. So when we come to discuss with some company, quite often we listen to the following statement: well, that's all right, your proposal is very good, but I can do this in Japan, right? And that we listen from Brazilian state-owned companies even. And we have to find ways to go around this. And there is a key issue I apologize if this is too money-bound. But it is, should we charge depreciation or not? Finally, no one of us is using his own money. He is using money from the organization to buy big equipment. That's, I think, I don't think that there is any case. I never heard about a university that acquired an electron microscope in Brazil. So, and we discussed this with people from the government. People in the Ministry of Planning say, of course, you have to charge depreciation. But if you charge depreciation, no way. Some prices will go above. So we are authorized by the Ministry of Science and Technology not to charge depreciation. And in this case, our prices are comparable, because otherwise, we can't forget, if a person working in the CNPEM brings home every month 8,000 reais, the salary is about 10, and I have to, no, not me, the center has to disburse 18,000 reais. That's something that does not happen in other places, right? So we have to make up for this. And we have to do it in a fair and transparent and agreed upon basis. So my suggestion, don't charge depreciation.
I thank Fernando for his last comment, because I was going to do some of them myself. I held myself in the last question, but not in this one. I just would like to remind you, taking the question one step further, and we discussed the different laboratories here and facilities, the national laboratory concepts, different ways of sustaining the laboratory. And for example, and there is in principle no reason not to charge depreciation and salaries from the industry. Industry should pay full price, unless you have a governmental policy to subsidize the industry, which I'm not necessarily against, but then comes from another source of, not from the laboratory budget. But this is a very tricky question, particularly when you go and look at the universities, where salaries in general come from. Well, you are reading the newspapers right now. I don't have to go very much on that. But how do you do your accounting? What do you include in your accounting? What do you do for the public research? What do you do for the private research? That's a very interesting question and a key point that should be permanently debated.
Working in Piracicaba, the Dentistry School, Unicamp, and we always had a problem with passing the funds between researchers and our SEM lab. The main difficulty is, how do you, researcher fund by FAPESP, you will use an equipment bought by FAPESP. That's no justification for that. So a researcher funded by FAPESP can't pay for an instrument bought by FAPESP. Is this real, or is this an illusion? Or this is another kind of a project? Because of that problem, we used to trade for consumables, filaments, lamps, liquid nitrogen, instead of money. And people are not used to pay for services. Could you ask for you an answer for how to pass these funds from FAPESP-funded researchers from São Paulo to the SEM lab from Piracicaba?
Well, about those questions about FAPESP, I thought about that. I write them down and then I handle to the proper person. Just joking. Well, this is something we should start to learn. That's one of the differences between national facility, which not necessarily has to be like that, actually, and facilities at the university and other facilities or research laboratories. And there are many issues here about funding and depreciation, which is the key issue that Fernando mentioned, salaries and consumables and everything else. Yes, FAPESP, some of the equipments that are in the facilities were funded by FAPESP, others not. But you should have in mind, we all should have in mind that the equipment is just the first step. I mean, you have to operate it. You have to operate with highly skilled people so that you don't transform this service in collaboration necessarily, which can be a collaboration, but not necessarily. If it's a collaboration, it's a common agreement, but not by necessity or enforced, for example. And there are the consumables, and there is the operation at the university and everything else. So I don't think, I believe that charging for the service facilities will be the common way to do it. And the way to do it is very simple. I mean, if you make a research project, I mean, you don't do research if you don't have a research project. I mean, in very seldom cases. If you do write a research project and ask for funding, you include there what you have to pay for the services you are expecting to do it. Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, that's very simple. Just, I mean, you know what you have to do. You know the facilities you have around, and this is no problem about that.
One of the principles that we have in CNPEM, even considering all the stuff that there is there, is that whenever we need support from someone else, we go and we ask for it, and quite frequently we have to pay for it. Before we had the FIB instrument operating, to do sample preparation for TM using FIB, we sent a person to Belo Horizonte, where they had an instrument operating. This person would spend 1 week there, and we would come up with the samples. And we paid, even though we are a national laboratory, right? So I think that, currency was invented thousands of years ago, right? It should not be a bad thing. And it should not be useless. It's a simple way to get what you need and feel happy because you provided what you can. So let's look at it this way.
Hi. Myself and a few others have had experiences working in national open access labs such as Cornell and Stanford and others. And there, the focus is really on having outside users have their hands on the equipment, learn how to use it. So when they take it back, go back home, buy one at a company, they know what they're doing. They don't have to hire a technician. And here in Brazil, there's so few technicians that you have to steal your technician, right? If they buy a Maldi or whatever. So what is the view? I mean, we come from the microfabrication. You need to use several steps, different equipment, and the focus is often on training the user to run. Let them make mistakes, charge them for it, and have that. What's the view on having users access equipment? That's a challenge I have at my place with our equipment. Some people don't want to let outside users touch it. I think they should.
Depends on the equipment. The really easy one, we have the IVs. This is the user can use it. The other one is so complex that we need something before. So they need to understand the machine to run it. If you're gonna use to cheat the user, you're gonna not waste, but it takes so long that you just delay the preparation, they run the sample, and you have to do again and again and again. I guess this will happen in the near future because we don't have enough technicians in the high skills one. But we have to think about in which equipment they can use. We have 2 or 3 that they really can work and just supervise, but not all of them.
Well, I think that you know how we operate, right? And I think they have some sort of reciprocity. Quite often people ask why we don't have any research group on photovoltaics, for instance. And we always reply that we don't do it because we have a neighbor institution that does it. And the internal instruction is, let's collaborate with them and support them, right? But now, concerning the training to go, I think it is very important to train people. But when I joined the laboratory, there was a role. Users should be trained. Sometimes users don't want to be trained. Sometimes users need results. And there is no the benefits sometimes they need does not pay for the heavy investment of time in training people. I had once a student that spent 6 months in an electron microscopy laboratory that was way, way back to be trained, right? And finally, the results are obtained by someone else, right? So I listened to Edgar Zanotto. Zanotto, I think, is not here. I asked Zanotto, he's an outstanding Brazilian researcher, asked him, why you are not a user of the electron microscopy facility? And he said, well, I attempted to do it. But the time it took my students to spend there to be trained until they could do the job was far too long for what I needed. So what we are doing now is train when training is going to be really useful. Otherwise, our personnel offers collaboration, support. Of course, a minimum training is necessary, always. But they offer collaboration support so that you don't have to spend months to finally get 2 or 3 results that at this time may have been published by someone else.
I think it depends on the equipment you are going to use. As Galembeck said, I mean, sometimes you need the result immediately. People look for us asking, I need this for yesterday, you know. And it's not in 1 week that you learn how to work in a GC or a synaptic G2. You need, it's very time consuming, and even though after each day you discover something new, different approach, and you can train people in a very short time. It's time demanding and people running for results. I think it's better to train a specialist to deal with the equipment, and you can produce results very quick and without needing to maintain. You put somebody that in the equipment that doesn't have a lot of experience, so finish up, break some things that you are not accounting for, and then you take months to repair. I think it's difficult.
Just a very short comment. Some amount of training is always good because you have to understand the experiment you want people to do it. But that was one of the concerns I raised at the beginning as the main objectives of this workshop. Equipments are becoming very, very sophisticated, and to train a user might become almost impossible. So this is something really we have to think about.
I'm going to take a hook on Roberto's question, and I love this final discussion right now because I have a real impression on LNNano. I have a project running there. So my students are trained. They go there to use the sputtering system, and they get results from that. I wasn't aware that such a big collaboration running on the biology side, that you have all the sequencing machines running in multiple labs and stuff. And the impression I had from the first few talks is that these machines are more like plug-and-play machines. I may be wrong. I'm completely ignorant on that. But you put your sample in with the right preparation, and it will eventually put out a sequence or something like that. So I think that in those cases, it might, I understand, I noticed this bias, right? I've heard from Galembeck, I know LNNano, I know that sometimes you need training. you can't have an experiment going without the student fully understanding the whole process, even the basics of the machine. And I think that's very a physics, maybe chemistry side of the thing. But in biology, maybe it's not the case, right? You want to have your DNA sequence in the output. It doesn't really matter what the laser inside the sequencer does. And so I feel, and those problems you raised, they're real, right? I participate on operating the Center for Semiconductor Components at Unicamp, and when we have users that break machines, it's a penalty, right? It takes 6 months to repair something because of importation issues and stuff. But I think as a university and forming PhD students, that what we expect from them, right? What I expect from my students is that as they graduate, they can set up a company to, really put that machine up, or set up a new research group that can buy their own machine and give support to them. So I don't see that coming out of a trained or service facility where you just go there, you pay, the guy who runs the SEM or the TM or whatever you like, and give you the result. I mean, you don't really understand all the physics or the chemistry or the biology that's going on in there. And so my question is, okay, how do you, at the university, I understand that synchrotron is much easier, right, to overcome. You have funding that's not tied to government, but at Unicamp, I'm feeling a lot of that burden, right? And there's this, you sit in tables sometimes, people are really like, we should not allow users to use this because this costs €1 million, it's going to break, but it's sort of this, barrier there, right? Some people think that you should go for the service facility. Some people think that we should train students. They must really learn what they are doing. I'm on one of those. And I would like to know if you guys are also facing this sort of, debate and what the perspectives on that.
I understand your concern, and I agree what you said. Just to let, for example, if I give an example of the sorting machine, it's really easy. But if you don't know where the gates are, you're going to select the wrong cells. So sometimes the student, if they're from immunology, where I am, all of them know. But you come from the vet school that are used to have this. This is a little bit difficult. I just said vet for a while because we do have one. So what we do have in the lab is that they send us what they want, and they are together with the technician running the samples. And the technician explains to him where the gates are and say, listen, this is the best that I can get from you, high purity cells, positive in this channel, positive in this one. Is what you want? Yes, so we select. So it's not only I give the samples in the window and then you come back and I give you the stuff. No, they do participate. This is happening in most all of the facilities that we have. Unfortunately, the way I think you're going to see this in the labs, not all of the teachers, professors think like you think. And all of the students have this background just to come over and explain what they want. We have to face, you sent an example of a criticism. I have one example that someone come with 40 million cells of splenocyte, the spleen, and they ask for 20 million CD4, and CD4 are 5%. So it's important 5% for 4 million. So they come up with this for us. So I agree with you, but not all of the equipments, they can be by our side. But as soon as they come, we explain. Absolutely.
I think that different operation procedures are necessary for different equipment. We are now starting 2 instruments. One is an XPS, which will go to the system next July. Go to the system means it's going to be open to users. And the other is microtomography apparatus should come in September. These 2 instruments, really, the physical time of interaction of the user, of the operator or user with the apparatus is minimal. Really, the big thing is interpretation of data. So in this case, I think that we are in a kind of a beta testing at this moment, and we realize that we may probably be receiving samples by mail, including, but there's going to be a lot of distance interaction through the internet, perhaps, discussing data results and so on. So I think that for each type of system we have to find the best way. And I thank you very much for the sympathetic reference to LNNano.
In our case at Unicamp, for example, in cell biology, our people work together with the students, our researchers, and help them, to get the best from the equipment. And of course, this is done case by case, and some people knows a lot about the technology, but most of them does not, and our people help. But in the case of let's say sequencing, I don't know if people will need to be trained in how to operate machine and how to prepare. Sometimes they prepare their libraries and they bring the libraries done, and then we put in machine. But anyway, I think that this kind of thing must be exercised case by case. What we do, we give training course in bioinformatics. Sometimes we give training course on certain technologies. We invite students and researchers to come for the seminar or things like that. So. But I really don't think that people need to know how everything works. For example, I don't have any idea of how this machine works. I don't know really, and how things goes from here to Japan right now and get, I don't know. I love to use, but I don't know. And well, anyway, you must be, I think that facilities can help a lot, to speed up, research in academia and in industry. So I see that we need to have more professional facilities in this country.
Just a comment. I have a faint idea of how this machine works, but I have no idea how to use it. Okay, I would like to thank the speakers and all the participants. We have a break for lunch. We should be back here at 2, so 5 before 2, so that we can start at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. One more warning, don't leave any valuable at the auditorium, please. We cannot guarantee anything. Thank you.